Asian culture influences many aspects of life in the Northwest, and gardens are no exception. Japanese gardens in particular are rapidly gaining popularity along the Pacific coast. This is probably a healthy sign in an age when life seems to get faster, noisier, and more contentious by the day. While any garden can be a place of quiet repose, a Japanese garden is specifically designed to be a center of peace amid the turmoil, a spot for solitude and meditation. Japanese gardening, which is intimately connected to the Zen tradition, can occupy a lifetime of study. But it is not necessary to become an Oriental philosopher to adapt a few Zen principles to your own garden. The Japanese garden at Seattle's Washington Park Arboretum offers a multitude of ideas that can be adapted to residential scale. Foremost among them is the concept of a garden as a harmonious whole. In a Japanese garden, there is no bright mix of color. Rather, flowers appear as accents among masses of foliage, and usually in restful pastels or dark tones like the deep pink of these azaleas. Wisteria is a favorite Japanese plant. Often it appears on an arbor like this one at the entrance to a path or another section of the garden. In a space that's too small for a large rambling vine, a standard wisteria, one trained to a single tree-like trunk, can be just as effective. Three elements are always present in a Japanese garden: water, stones, and plants. The natural look of this scene belies its careful planning. Each rock in the stream and each plant along its banks was placed with meticulous care. Continuous pruning, weeding, and tidying ensure that the composition remains harmonious. Most of the flowers in Japanese gardens are those on flowering trees or shrubs. Fleeting blossoms like those of these azaleas take a back seat to foliage, which provides structure all year round. The composition formed here by rounded shrubs, feathery sword fern, and weathered stones will remain long after the flowers have faded. This view shows the classic triad of stones, water, and plants on a scale almost any home gardener could duplicate. A simple stone basin set on boulders on a blanket of pachysandra. Behind is a billowing pink rhododendron and a weeping lace-leaf Japanese maple.
This is the work of an ardent gardener. Her site, deep in the woods on an island in Puget Sound, is one Thoreau would covet. Most of us would view the spot with more mixed feelings. Envy for the solitude and for the mild Pacific climate, trepidation at the thought of making a garden in that much shade. The fact that this gardener has succeeded so admirably is a testament to her knowledge, her patience, and her imagination. The enormous variety of woodland plants in this garden totally negates the oft-heard complaint that nothing will grow in the shade. The collection includes primroses, foxglove, astilbe, sweet woodruff, and bluebells, both Spanish and English. The white blossom tree is a flowering cherry, Prunus Mount Fuji. In gardening, there is no surefire road to success, but there is a strategy that works more often than not. Learn all you can about the plants that grow best in your region and your microclimate, then use them. This planting shows the result of just such an approach. Here, there are no sun lovers languishing in too little light. Instead, there's a collection of woodland natives thriving in the dappled shade. They include ferns, forget-me-nots, bleeding heart, and Welsh poppies. The house sits on a hillside covered with rhododendrons, a perfect choice for both the shady site and the region's acid soil. Under the shrubs, the gardener has planted a carpet of sweet woodruff, Welsh poppies, and hardy cyclamen. Trillium grandiflorum performs best in the moist shade and acid soil of a woodland garden. In the benign climate of the Pacific Northwest, it spreads rapidly. The flowers bloom snow-white in early spring, then turn pink, deepening to dark rose as they age. There is a school of thought that holds water to be a vital part of every garden, even if it's only a tiny bird bath. In this pond, most fountains would look contrived and pretentious, but a moss-covered stone strikes exactly the right note of rustic simplicity. At an elevation of 8,200 feet, Betty Ford Alpine Gardens in Vail, Colorado is the highest public botanic garden in North America. Set against a Rocky Mountain backdrop, it serves as both classroom and laboratory for the study of high-altitude plants and their habitat. It also provides great inspiration to anyone who gardens far above sea level. This boulder-strewn slope offers a lesson in the use of color. When it's as dramatic as the red of these Iceland poppies, a little goes a long way. The mounds of blue forget-me-nots soften the effect without washing it out. Even dead trees can add sculptural drama to a landscape. This weathered Colorado juniper complements the shape of the weeping Colorado blue spruce on the right. In this view of the rock garden, native spruces, pines, and junipers form a protective backdrop for pink and lavender creeping phlox. Many of the plants that thrive in the Colorado Rockies will perform just as well at high altitudes elsewhere. This grouping provides some good examples. In the foreground are yellow and orange Iceland poppies and purple violas. In the back is a yellow Scotch broom, and to its left, a blue Colorado spruce. Rock ledges absorb the sun's heat during the day, then release it as evening progresses, thus creating a microclimate that's milder than usual. These plants all appreciate the added warmth. The yellow plant in the rear is Scotch broom. In front are creeping sedums, dark red penstemons, purple violas, and a spreading variety of Scotch broom called Vancouver Gold.
The woman who lives here had always craved an English cottage garden. But when she bought this house in Portland, Oregon, she knew she'd have to give a little. An old-fashioned tumble of flowers would be too rustic for the Georgian colonial architecture. To get the best of both styles, she took a cue from British writers Vida Sackville-West and Harold Nicolson. At their famed garden, Sissinghurst, Harold laid out rigid geometric patterns of walls and hedges, and Vida filled them with exuberant masses of color and texture. The result, in Portland as at Sissinghurst, is a pleasant tension between disciplined formality and billowing abundance. A stone pillar-turned-planter stands amid a circle of herbs in a brick-edged bed. The concrete pig adds a whimsical note. Even from behind a curtain of roses, the box hedges give structure to plantings of old-fashioned cottage flowers, including delphiniums, allium, coreopsis, and lady's mantle. A successful border combines a variety of shapes and textures. This one blends tall, spiky lilies and delphiniums with soft, feathery coral bells and mounds of artemisia. Boxwood thrives in the mild Oregon climate, and the gardener has used it lavishly. The symmetrical arrangement of hedges and paths make the motley planting seem light-hearted, never chaotic. Boxwood thrives in the mild Oregon climate, and the gardener has used it lavishly. The symmetrical arrangement of hedges and paths make the motley planting seem light-hearted, never chaotic.
One of the most exciting developments in gardening in recent years has been the popularity of natural landscaping. All over the country, homeowners are realizing that a garden filled largely with plants native to their region can be not only beautiful, but also less expensive to maintain than a pristine lawn sprinkled with a few shrubs and maybe a tree or two. Nowhere is this trend more evident than in the Midwest, where, in gardens like this one, meadows of prairie wildflowers seem to flow from the house like a multicolored river. This yellow and pink planting consists mostly of oxeye daisies and bee balm. A prairie meadow garden typically includes both perennials and self-seeding annuals. This planting combines the perennials oxeye daisy, bee balm, and gray-headed coneflower with annual fleabane. When your front yard is a meadow, the view changes with each passing season. This autumn scene includes sedum autumn joy and feather reed grass. In August, Rudbeckia fulgida goldstorm echoes the color of the prairie sun. Interspersed are clumps of feather reed grass, little blue stem, and in the center, sedum autumn joy. In this garden, the meadow comes right up to the house. Here, the ornamental grass little blue stem and purple coneflower edge a brick path. The flower colors complement the mellow hues of the brick, as well as the gray shades of the house and the low retaining wall. At a time when the only sure bet seems to be that nothing stays the same, Mackinac Island endures. One of the country's last great summer resorts, it lies like an island lost in time, in the straits that separate Lake Huron and Lake Michigan. It's the Midwest's equivalent of Newport, Nantucket, and Kennebunkport. But, unlike its larger East Coast counterparts, Mackinac guards its Victorian purity with a vengeance. So much so that cars are banned from the island. All travel is by carriage, horseback, or bicycle. Of course, there's seldom a need to travel very far. On a warm summer afternoon, the front porch makes a fine destination, especially for those of us who think rocking in a wicker chair and gazing at the garden is about as exciting as August needs to get. As in any summer resort, life at Mackinac is lived largely outdoors. A gazebo in the trees provides an ideal way to hide from the midday sun without retreating to the house. This one, painted to match the cottage, is accented by a planter of shade-loving tuberous begonias. Carpet bedding, the planting of bright summer annuals in tightly controlled patterns, is quintessentially Victorian. This arrangement of descending rows is a classic example, combining nearly all of the plants most often used in carpet beds: marigolds, geraniums, petunias, impatiens, dusty miller, and alyssum. The style has fallen out of favor with most gardeners. Buying and maintaining all those plants every year is too expensive and time-consuming to make sense in most parts of the country. In a place like Mackinac, though, the situation is different. Because most people live here from Memorial Day through Labor Day, they want gardens that bloom right from the start and keep blooming till the last ferry heads back to the mainland. Only annuals can perform that task. Mackinac's big old cottages are the stuff of which summertime dreams are made. So are the gardens. This fountain, surrounded by a raised bed of old-fashioned flowers, would be right at home just off Main Street 100 years ago. Water sets the tone in this part of the world. Though it's free of the salt spray that challenges coastal gardeners, the wind coming off the Great Lakes plays havoc with plants. The hardy annuals and perennials in this waterfront border can take some pretty rough treatment. The planting includes Nicotiana, Lavatera, Candytuft, Shasta daisies, and feverfew, all in soft colors that blend with the blues and greens of the water.
The vegetable garden is a quintessential part of America's heartland. That seems only right, with a heritage that's firmly tied to agriculture and a climate that seems tailor-made for corn and tomatoes. A gardener would feel guilty, even downright unpatriotic, if he didn't grow his own. Today, like their counterparts elsewhere, Midwestern gardeners are rediscovering the vegetables their ancestors grew. Varieties that have the full, rich flavor lacking in many modern hybrids. In this garden in Iowa, heirloom vegetables grow practically up to the front door. Here, Chinese cabbage and Japanese purple mustard nestle between marigolds and petunias. Hardy varieties like this Siberian kale grow well even into the snowy Midwestern winter. Unlike commercial hybrids, which are bred to ripen all at once, heirloom vegetables mature continuously throughout the growing season. That's a boon to the home gardener who wants to pick enough for tonight's dinner and leave the rest for later. Annual flowers like these marigolds thrive in the short but hot summers of the continent's midsection. They, along with the asters and larkspur behind them, play a crucial role in a garden of heirloom vegetables. Because these old varieties are not pollinated by man as hybrids are, they rely on colorful flowers to attract birds, bees, and other insects. These greens won't be eaten. They're being grown for the Seed Savers Exchange, a group dedicated to preserving heirloom varieties of vegetables, fruit, and flowers. The seed from the Swiss chard and Italian lacinato kale will be passed on to organization members who will grow it and in turn pass along more seed. The same destiny awaits the old-fashioned morning glories climbing the barn. Carefully planned and well-tended, a vegetable plot can be as pleasing to the eye as the most extravagant perennial border. The neat beds in this garden include strawberries, corn, beans, and 2 kinds of broccoli. Cranbrook House in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, was the home of George and Ellen Booth. Built in 1908, the house reflects the Booths' enthusiastic involvement in the arts and crafts movement then flourishing in the Midwest. When the Booths bought their 40-acre property, it was a sorely neglected farm with a dried-up lake, a dying peach orchard, and vast fields of litter. Today, Cranbrook Gardens ranks as one of the most beautiful public gardens in the country, and one that most clearly reflects the feeling of its era and its region. The lawn at the side of the house serves as a broad terrace. In spring and summer, tree-form azaleas in pots are set around a bronze sculpture, one of many the booths commission for both house and garden. Hostas and ferns, all hardy enough to withstand cold Michigan winters, form the backbone of a shade garden. Creamy margins on the hosta leaves lighten the expanse of green in the same way white flowers would. Moss has been allowed to grow among the weathered bricks, adding to the mellow feeling. Even the toughest plants can suffer in Michigan's gusty winters. Throughout Cranbrook, dense hedges like this one serve as attractive windscreens. As an added assurance of success, gardeners rely on plant varieties they know can take the weather. This border contains yellow yarrow, white oxeye daisies, silvery artemisia, and pink penstemons. A tour of Cranbrook is a virtual design course on the use of sculpture in the landscape. Here, a white marble statue provides the focal point in a formal herb garden. The wall is made of glacial fieldstone the booths gathered as they renovated the old farm. The Great Lakes area, with its long, cold winters and hot, humid summers, demands rugged plant material. The hardy perennials in this sunny courtyard fill the bill nicely. A color scheme confined to pink, yellow, and green creates a restful atmosphere. The flowers in bloom here are yellow loosestrife and potentia, and pink peonies.
The owner of this garden enjoys a luxury known to few of us. She has lived on and tended the same piece of Pennsylvania farmland for more than half a century. When she and her husband bought the farm in 1940, it was already old. The house had been built in 1780, the barn maybe a few years earlier. There were some ancient trees, fertile soil, and long views of rolling hills, but not so much as a single flower bed. Today, the place is a prime example of a mature country garden, and a testament to what one person can accomplish with a good eye, a lot of energy, and boundless love for the land. Trees and shrubs surround the farmhouse. Foliage and flowers, berries and bark provide glorious views from every window all year long. The stone wall shelters a sunny terrace, creating a warmer microclimate inside and screening a view of the main road. A 200-year-old house, colonies of stately trees, and sweeping borders of mature plants give this garden an aura that comes only with half a century of loving care. But it contains ideas for every gardener. Among them is a masterful use of color. Here, blue mountain cornflowers and yellow daylilies echo the blues and yellows in the distant border. The owner still does most of the garden work herself. For ease of maintenance, she relies on hardy perennials that don't need to be coddled through cold, snowy Pennsylvania winters. In keeping with the informal architecture of the house, plantings are casual. Here, a rough fieldstone wall backs a border that includes blue phlox, blue Siberian irises, and white slender deutzia. Daylilies have earned a reputation for hardiness and versatility. These early flowering yellow ones share an end of the perennial border with columbine and white Deutzia gracilis. Hardy water lilies can remain in this pool all year long. Many of the hundreds of tropical varieties would look good here too, but in this part of the country they'd have to be lifted for the winter. Despite its perfect round shape, the water garden retains an informal country air, thanks to the unstructured planting of silvery artemisia, pink columbine, and pink coral bells.
Among gardeners, there are those who would argue that a city garden imparts an even greater sense of magic than its rural counterpart. This one, for instance, on a Philadelphia rooftop, lets its owner leave the frantic pace of urban life at the door and step into a secluded, colorful retreat. Here, the fastest track around belongs to the birds who navigate through the maze of brick and concrete. It takes a sturdy plant to thrive on a rooftop. On this one, the sun is more intense and the wind stronger than at ground level. The owner of this garden has simplified his task by making this a garden of, for the most part, annual plants. He doesn't have to contend with bundling up perennials to protect them from winter gales. Hanging baskets of ivy-leaf geraniums spend the cold months on windowsills indoors. Canna-tubers are dug up and stored till spring. Scarlet sage and nicotiana are composted and replaced the following year. For the harried urbanite who lives here, this rooftop garden is a summer living room. The plants form three-dimensional walls, screening views of streets and nearby buildings and muffling noise. They also help filter pollutants from the air, an added advantage to a city garden. Northeast summers are usually hot and humid, and on a rooftop, the sun can be brutal. This lath arbor covered with climbing vines creates welcome shade for both people and plants. The wood plank floor is raised above the roof's surface, allowing room for a drainage system. Water from rain or from watering runoff drips through cracks between the boards and is carried to downspouts. Making a roof garden is not a simple task. Good planning is crucial, and so is a sturdy roof with strong support beams. Even when they're filled with a lightweight potting mix, large planters are heavy. The ones in this garden have been carefully positioned over load-bearing walls that can easily handle their weight. In the excitement of planning a paradise in the air, it's easy to forget that all those plants, as well as soil, planters, building materials, and furniture, will have to be hauled to the roof. And some of those things will have to be hauled back down and stored for the winter. By using large wooden planters, the owner of this garden has made his winter preparations easier. Unlike more delicate terracotta pots, the wooden planters can stay outdoors all year round. What's more, they, like the wooden railings and lath arbor, will gain charm as they weather through the years.
Meadowbrook Farm in eastern Pennsylvania is the essence of formality. Though grand by residential standards of the 1990s, it offers all gardeners a multitude of lessons on the use of scale, color, and symmetry. In the spring, the hills and valleys of the Northeast turn into frothy confections of new flowers and foliage. Meadowbrook Farm plays the color card to full advantage in the azaleas and dogwoods that surround the main house. A formal herb garden takes on the dual roles of kitchen garden and outdoor living room. Culinary herbs and salad greens fill beds set into mellow brick. An old sundial makes a useful focal point in the center. Tall hedges both contain the space visually and confine the aromas rising from sweet and pungent herbs. One of the most difficult things to maintain in a very formal garden is a perennial border, and this double border comes very close to perfection. As every gardener knows, plants seem to have minds of their own. In a less structured garden, they can lean against one another, spill out onto the paths, climb through the branches of nearby shrubs. It's all part of the charm. In a strictly formal garden like this one, however, much greater discipline prevails. The result can be beautiful, but marshaling a diverse collection of plants into almost military order and keeping them there takes immense amounts of time and effort. The terrace of the main house looks onto this circular sunken garden. It owes its cool elegance not only to clean lines and perfect symmetry, but also to the color scheme. Green grass and foliage accented with pale blue ageratum and a few white-flowered shrubs. The Tuscan Temple of Love at the end of the grass path adds a further note of formality. In the last century, no self-respecting formal garden was without a conservatory. This arbor lives up to the grand tradition, though its flagstone floor and simple post and beam construction could be easily adapted to a smaller structure. The air of formality comes from the symmetrical arrangement of plants, including potted ivy topiaries, hanging ferns, and in the center, a verbena on an antique pedestal. The bright red flowers belong to a lipstick plant, or calumnia.
In the 1860s, poet Celia Thaxter planted this garden on Appledore Island off the coast of Maine. She planned it as a simple cutting garden, filled with what she called old-fashioned flowers our grandmothers loved. It soon became a favorite subject of the painter Childe Hassam, one of the many artists and writers who summered on Appledore. Though her house has long since burned to the ground, Celia's garden has been restored following the original plan. Seen against a background of sea and sky, it evokes the same feeling of wonder and enchantment it held more than a century ago. Of all the flowers Celia grew, she probably loved poppies best. She planted every variety she could find, and in her book, An Island Garden, she wrote about them at length. As a poet and an artist, she liked the way the light shone through the translucent petals and the way the clear shades of pink, rose, and scarlet played against gray rocks and blue sea. And as a gardener, she appreciated the fact that such delicate-looking plants were tough enough to thrive on a storm-blown island. Raised beds allow easy amendment of the soil, which here, as in much of coastal New England, is sparse and rocky. The white board fence visually contains the garden and supplies a unifying element to the multitude of flower colors. It also helps keep out foraging animals, especially muskrats, which are plentiful on the island. In photographs and paintings, the garden appears bigger than it really is, just 15 by 50 feet. When she designed this garden, Celia made every inch count. The raised beds both permit close planting and impart order to what would be a jumbled mass of color. Pink asters, yellow coleopsis, and blue cornflowers fill the bed in the foreground. At the right, morning glories climb an arch that once led to Celia's cottage. Celia grew sweet peas for their fragrance as well as for their clear colors. She gathered them by the dozens for the bouquets that filled her house all summer. Celia grew sweet peas for their fragrance as well as for their clear colors. She gathered them by the dozens for the bouquets that filled her house all summer. This garden near Fort Worth, Texas, was among the last created by famed English landscape architect Russell Page before his death in 1985. What his client first had in mind was a simple, easy-to-maintain rose garden. What she ultimately got was a testament to Page's artistry and a piece of living history that occupies a full-time staff of 5. A Russell Page garden is well beyond the means of most of us, but his legacy remains within the reach of every gardener. Page combined the aesthetic instincts of a great artist with the practical knowledge of a lifelong plantsman, and he used both qualities to full advantage in his gardens. In this case, Page's client got her rose garden filled with old-fashioned varieties she loves in muted shades of pink and white. The designer edged the beds with boxwood and laid them out parallel to a reflecting pool filled with tropical water lilies. An L-shaped bed bordered with heather contains miniature roses. The 4 perfectly square beds along the flagstone walk are edged in boxwood and planted with salvia. The pergola bordering the pool provides shelter from the blazing Texas sun. This garden was one of few Page designed around modern architecture, which he disliked in general. Somehow he always found ways to soften the stark lines of the house. In this case, a curving flight of stairs planted in grass and heather provides a mitigating element. A trio of terracotta pots on a terrace wall draws the eye upward. This stairway leading from the rose garden to the house offers a lesson in the use of texture. The stair risers echo the color of the rough stone planter. In artful contrast, the stair treads are made of smooth, dark granite. The combination of gray and green foliage and soft pink flowers adds color variety while retaining a softness that's soothing in hot weather. Page believed firmly in the liberal use of water in the landscape. It adds a refreshing element that's welcome anywhere, but especially in the hot southwestern climate. Because the temperature stays warm, the tropical water lilies in this pool can stay outdoors year-round. One of Page's trademarks is an artful use of containers. He lined the edge of the pergola with white agapanthus, also known as lily of the Nile, an apt choice for this humid, hot part of Texas. The structure is a simple one of weathered boards. The roof strips form a pattern that in bright sunshine casts diagonal shadows on the floor.
The poet Robinson Jeffers and his wife Una were in the vanguard of an art colony that thronged to Carmel, California in the years following World War I. On a rocky cliff overlooking Carmel Bay, they built a house and a 40-foot tower of granite boulders dragged from the beach below. The surrounding garden, now owned by the Nature Conservancy, remains an outstanding example of a design suited to both house and site. This view shows Tor House, named for the rocky outcrop on which it stands, and one of the area's classic Monterey cypresses. As do many gardens on the California coast, this one relies heavily on plants from the Mediterranean region. Here on the hillside are rosemary, French lavender, and white sweet alyssum. This garden occupies a sheltered courtyard between house and tower. To one side of the doorway is a Cecil Bruner rose. On the other side, a perennial morning glory. The Irish yew on the left echoes the shape of the tower. In the foreground, purple and white delphiniums and white anemones pick up colors of the sea. Behind the house are some of the 2,000 trees, pines, eucalyptus, and cypresses Jeffers planted. They shield views of nearby houses and slow the strong winds that sweep down the Carmel River Valley. When Una Jeffers first saw this wild, windswept part of California, it reminded her of England's Cornwall coast. The garden she planned perfectly suits the exposed rocky outcrop. Here, flanking a path leading to the sea, are silvery cottonbush and dark green rosemary. Against the house are orange-flowered crocosmia and bronze fennel. The plants along this brick path all thrive in the light, sandy soil typically found in seaside gardens. Looking from the foreground back, this grouping includes borage, limonium, purple sea lavender, and watsonia. Gardening in Carmel's sandy soil is a challenge, but thanks to hefty doses of organic matter, these roses thrive. They include the hybrid teas Friendship and Peace and the red climber Blaze.
Blake Garden covers 10 hillside. Mabel Sims had a good eye for the essential lines in a garden. She also appreciated the strong Mediterranean influence prevalent in California. To define the main axis of the garden, she used a long pool and an avenue of grandiflora magnolias. Together, they draw the eye to a strong and very Italian focal point, a staircase curving around a recessed grotto. A curving border edged with lobelia leads the eye toward a raised pool surrounding a stone grotto. The wide edge serves as a seat. Blue ceramic tiles set into the wall add cool color. A glory vine growing rampantly in the mild, moist air all but conceals the grotto. Raised beds and hedges form a series of outdoor rooms that lead visitors to the house. The sense of gentle intimacy is heightened by the lush vegetation. In a drier climate, the concept would work just as well with a combination of fences, lattice, and sparser plantings. A wooden door set into a hedge leads to an enclosed seating area. The half-moon-shaped top frames a Eucryphia cordifolia. Its scented white flowers appear in the summer, adding a shimmering quality to the landscape.
If this house looks as though it's just sprung up in the middle of an untouched desert, there's a good reason. The owners planned it that way. From the time they bought the land in central Arizona until the final coat of paint dried on the house, they guarded the local flora with the ferocity of a mother bear defending her cubs. The plants they couldn't save in place, they moved. They also added plants from similar desert climates. In the process, they created not only a beautiful setting for the house, but also a mecca for local wildlife. Peccaries, wild nocturnal relatives of the pig, visit nightly, and hummingbirds arrive by the dozens to drink from the bright red flowers of autumn sage and tuberosa. Only a low wall separates terrace from desert. Even the plants beside the shades are arid climate natives. Among them are Penstemon perrii, ocotillo, and red yucca. A saguaro cactus watching over the wall is one of many on the property, some more than a century old and 30 feet tall. Slow-growing saguaros are rapidly disappearing as development spreads across the western desert. By maintaining their land in its natural state, these homeowners feel they're saving pieces of living history. In addition to guarding the old giants, they're also providing a protected nursery for young saguaros. The homeowners are justly proud of their venerable cactuses. This opuntia, or prickly pear, and the aloe at its base make dramatic accents on the patio. At first glance, a fountain like the one on the left might seem a wasteful extravagance. In reality, it's a wise use of a precious resource. The gentle sounds of splashing water refresh the spirit and make even the hottest day seem cooler. And because a pump constantly recirculates the same water, very little is wasted. A colorful planting leads the eye to the front door. Bright desert flowers attract birds, which nest in large cactuses. The fine texture of a large ocotillo softens the stucco walls of the house. A desert version of a perennial border thrives at poolside. A planting of cactuses and succulents provides the ultimate in low-maintenance gardening, demanding no pruning and no weeding. More importantly, in this part of Arizona, which gets only 7 inches of rainfall a year, it needs no watering. The design and plantings of this garden are typical of the subtropical regions of the country, notably the southern tip of Florida and the territories of Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. As it does in many warm climates, the patio assumes a multitude of roles. Here it performs 2 functions that would be appropriate anywhere. It shields the house from a busy street and creates an elegant outdoor entrance hall. The flowers, however, are strictly regional, including red hibiscus against the far wall and a hedge of crotons in the foreground. Water adds a cooling effect to even the hottest climate. In this small pool, a clump of papyrus grows amid tropical water lilies. Ferns soften the concrete edges. In this scene, the patio becomes an observation platform from which to view the sea. At the edges of the terracotta paving are pentas and bougainvillea. Only in a climate like this one could a gardener create such a miniature rainforest. Planted mostly with bromeliads and other tropical plants, it crowns the crest of a small hill. Red flowers need to be used carefully, or they can overpower. Red flowers need to be used carefully, or they can overpower a garden, especially in a hot climate where warm colors seem to add degrees to the temperature. This grouping works perfectly. The deep red of hibiscus and pentas, set against dark green palms and grass, conveys a settled feeling, almost like that of an old oriental carpet.
A view like this reminds many of us why we garden in the first place. To create worlds, however small, that take us back to a simpler age. A day when there was time to stand on a bridge, gazing at bald cypress trees and Spanish moss reflected in the quiet water. A time when the loudest sound you'd hear was the moaning whistle of a distant steamboat. Traditional Southern architecture makes great use of porches. This one seems to float on a sea of peach and azalea blossoms. Hanging from the porch roof are baskets of nasturtiums and lobelia. To many of us, the words Southern Garden conjure up visions of towering live oaks festooned with Spanish moss, an early mist rising from the grass, a few pink azaleas wearing their first spring blossoms, an antebellum house rising in the hazy distance, images much like the ones in this picture. The style and white color of this gazebo are very much in keeping with the overall design of the garden. The structure has an air of formal restraint, even surrounded by sprawling palmettos. Southern gardens tend toward formality. Even in this woodland glade, instead of random drifts of daffodils, there is a carefully placed bed of tulips. These lily-flowered Mariettas pick up the pink shades of the azaleas in the background.
This garden in Charleston, South Carolina, occupies a city lot just 30 by 50 feet, but a careful division of space and an artful use of color make it seem much bigger. Like many southern gardens, this one enjoys its peak of bloom during the region's long, gentle spring, when flowering bulbs and shrubs burst forth. In keeping with the style of the house and the character of the neighborhood, this is a rather formal garden. Its secluded location, behind the house, allows it to function as an outdoor room. In this view, looking from the rear of the garden, a young grandiflora magnolia shades a stone terrace. At the rear boundary, a brick carriage house shields the garden from the street. A circle of shade-loving azaleas and camellias forms a cool seating area. Though camellias are not hardy in most parts of the country, many varieties of azaleas will thrive throughout the continent. A crazy quilt of bright flowers can be perfect for a country cottage, but this traditional house in an elegant southern city demanded a more limited palette. Here, a spring border of pink tulips and azaleas and white stock looks both festive and serene. A touch of restraint is just as crucial in choosing accents for a formal garden as it is in laying out beds and selecting plants. This pair of bronze herons, not the least bit cute, look right at home among ferns, strawberry begonias, and fallen camellia flowers. This garden is an excellent example of formal design on a small scale. The feeling of peace and serenity comes in part from the symmetrical lines of paths, borders, and clipped balls of boxwood, and in part from the color scheme. Drifts of pink and white flowers, set against the green of foliage and lawn, impart a sense of ease and harmony.
Gunston Hall is the Tidewater, Virginia home of George Mason, a delegate to the Constitutional Convention and the author in 1776 of the Virginia Declaration of Rights. Mason is probably best known for his refusal to sign the United States Constitution because at first it did not include such a guarantee of individual liberties. He infuriated his friend Thomas Jefferson, who feared Mason's stubbornness would endanger the future of the still precarious republic. But Mason was vindicated when the Bill of Rights was added to the Constitution in 1791, based squarely on his Virginia Declaration. So what's this historical anecdote have to do with gardening? Plenty, as a matter of fact. Every garden reflects the personality of its owner. At Jefferson's Monticello, for instance, we see the stamp of a passionate gardener who vied with neighbors to grow the most fragrant roses or the earliest, sweetest peas. At Gunston Hall, on the other hand, we see the work of a busy, no-nonsense man who wanted simply to make an appropriate setting for a solid red brick house. An appropriate setting is exactly what Gunston Hall has. Masses of boxwood, holly, and other evergreens anchor the house firmly to the ground. Some of the box is left unclipped, like the billowing mounds on the right. Most of it, though, is tightly pruned like these regimental rows leading to the house. White peonies in the center and a white bench farther along draw the eye toward the building. Even viewed from afar, Gunston Hall is clearly a house at one with its landscape. Settled firmly into the green Virginia hills, it conveys an aura of permanence. Like the other work of the man who created it, it seems to say, because this is right, it will endure. Outdoor structures perform many functions in a landscape. One of them is providing a frame through which to view a house and its surroundings. This scene shows dramatically the perfect teaming of house and garden. Together they present a picture of timeless southern gentility. Most boxwood demands a fairly mild climate, but in suitable temperatures, it's rugged stuff. These hedges are the same ones George Mason planted more than 200 years ago. The ones in this photo show the effects of an unusually hard Virginia winter, but they'll soon bounce back. The straight lines of paths and hedges lead the eye from a fiery curtain of quince blossoms toward a hillside just coming into bloom. At dusk, the early spring countryside seems ablaze with autumn color. In reality, the red glow comes from the setting sun reflecting on banks of scarlet quince blossoms. As do all the plantings at Gunston Hall, these lead the eye toward a dramatic focal point. In this case, a small gazebo set against a backdrop of budding trees.
Baptisia australis.
This system works well for gardeners with a large volume of suitable waste and a desire to make the highest quality compost. It consists of 3 side-by-side units, each 3 to 5 feet square. In the first bin, alternate 6-inch layers of high carbon materials, such as dried leaves or sawdust, with 3-inch layers of high nitrogen materials, such as grass clippings, vegetable scraps, or manure. Dampen each layer thoroughly until it is about the consistency of a wrung-out sponge. Check the bin regularly. During the first week or two, the compost will heat up noticeably and the volume will shrink as much as 30%. When the pile drops in temperature, turn the material into the second bin. At the same time, start the process with new layers of material in the first bin. Keep checking the compost piles. When they again enter a cool phase, turn each into the next bin. Within a few weeks, the compost in the third bin should be ready to use. In warm weather, the whole process often can be completed in less than 2 months.
Use a 16-inch wire basket. Line it with a 2 to 3-inch layer of sphagnum moss. Fill with a lightweight commercial potting soil to within 2 inches of the top. Mix in 2 tablespoons of slow-release fertilizer pellets. Set the plants on top of the soil, arranging them until you like the effect. You can crowd them more than you might in the garden, but make sure the roots have room to grow. Dig holes equal to or slightly larger than the root balls. Set in each plant and cover the roots firmly but gently. Fill the basket with more soil to within 3/4 of an inch from the top. For a fuller effect, you can plant on the sides and bottom of the basket. Dig through the moss and set in the plants, adding more soil with each plant. Slowly water until water runs out the bottom of the container. Before you hang the basket, make sure the hook is well anchored. Filled and watered baskets, even with lightweight soil, are heavy. Vines climb in 3 ways. Vines such as English ivy or climbing hydrangea send out rootlets that cling to any support they encounter. These need little help. Simply plant them at the base of the structure you want them to cover, and they'll scramble upward. Vines such as sweet pea and clematis species have tendrils that grow out from the stem and wrap themselves around string, wire, or the stems of other plants. Plant these climbers next to a trellis of wire or nylon mesh. If the plant already has long shoots, arrange these on the trellis in the direction you want them to go. Fasten them loosely with twine or coated twist ties until the tendrils begin to grip. It shouldn't take more than a day or so. Twining vines such as morning glory grow around their supports. They can be used to great advantage to camouflage chain link fences. Plant the seed at the base of the support. When the first long stems appear, gently guide them up and fasten them lightly with twine or twist ties. Once the vines start weaving their way through the openings, they'll need no more help. In late autumn, cut long, vigorous stems of the past season's growth from plants that are healthy and free of insects. Cuttings will vary in length, depending on the species. Diameters will range from 1/4 to 1 inch. Remove and discard the thin terminal portion of the stem. Cut the remainder into uniform lengths of 4 to 12 inches, making sure each has at least 2 sets of buds. Try to make cuts just above a bud at the top and 1/2 inch below a bud at the base. Cut the top at a slant so you can tell top from bottom when it's time to plant. Dip the bottom inch of each cutting in a rooting hormone fungicide mix made especially for hardwood cuttings. Fasten the cuttings into bundles with rubber bands. Pack damp sphagnum moss around the base of each bundle and place it in a plastic bag. Seal the bag and attach a label showing the date, name of plant, and required treatment. Store the bag at a temperature of 55 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit for 14 to 21 days. Then move to cold storage at 35 to 40 degrees, the refrigerator will do nicely, until spring. As soon as the ground can be worked, plant in a very well-drained area. Place each cutting in the ground so that only 1 or 2 buds are visible. Until the cuttings are well established, provide some shade from the hot sun. A piece of lattice works well. When new leaves appear and the plants begin growing, feed them once a month with an all-purpose fertilizer. By autumn, in mild parts of the country, the new shrubs should be ready to move to their permanent homes. Where winters are cold, it's better to wait for spring before transplanting.
Remove packing material and gently pull or spray off any earth clinging to the plant's roots. Prune off dead or broken roots and branches. Soak the plant in a bucket of water for 1 to 4 hours, but no longer than overnight. Dig a hole that's twice as wide as it is deep. With a fork or shovel, loosen the sides of the hole so the soil doesn't solidify around the plant's roots. Mound soil in the bottom of the hole and place the center of the plant on the mound with the roots spreading out below it. Fill in the soil, packing it firmly enough to remove large air pockets, but not hard enough to compact it. Water thoroughly.
Before you plant the tree, drive 2 sturdy wooden or metal stakes next to the hole. Secure the tree to the stakes with broad straps or wire threaded through pieces of hose. Don't use bare wire. Over time it will girdle the bark. Allow enough slack so the tree can move up to 2 inches in any direction. If the trunk can't move, it won't grow in girth and will remain unstable. Remove the stakes and ties within a year.
Select a site that's well-drained, fairly weed-free, and sunny in the spring. Under deciduous trees is good. The bulbs will bloom before the trees have fully leafed out, but avoid planting under evergreens. Scatter the bulbs at random on top of the soil and plant them where they land. Dig a hole the recommended depth for the bulb. Daffodils should be planted at about 6 inches. A special bulb planting tool makes the job easier. Add a little bone meal or bulb food to the hole. Set in the bulb, being careful to get the right side up, and cover with soil. Remember, when you plant bulbs in your lawn, you won't be able to mow the grass until after the bulb's foliage has died. Apply a summer mulch after the ground has begun to warm up in the spring, when new growth has started to appear. Weed the area thoroughly and cultivate the surface. When plants are 4 to 8 inches tall, apply the mulch to the soil surface. Lift the foliage and spread a 1 to 2 inch layer. Get the mulch under the foliage, but keep it away from the stems. Material piled too close can encourage insects and prevent water and air from reaching the plant's root system. In late fall, dig the mulch lightly into the soil. Use winter mulches in regions where the ground alternately freezes and thaws. Before the first heavy frost, apply a 4 to 6 inch layer of loose material such as conifer branches, salt hay, or dry leaves. These will permit air circulation on plants that retain their leaves in winter. In spring, gradually remove the mulch over a period of 10 days to 2 weeks. If possible, work on rainy or overcast days, letting the plants become accustomed to the sunlight.
The first preparation for cold weather comes before you plant. Try to site your roses in an area that is sunny but protected from cold winds. Some gardeners fertilize in fall, late September in the Northeast, with muriate of potash to promote development of dormancy. Keep watering through the fall to provide moisture for root development and retention of moisture in the canes. Stop deadheading in September or October to encourage formation of rose hips and further promote dormancy. When the plant is dormant, prune it back to prevent whipping and wind damage. Spray the canes with an antidesiccant to minimize dehydration. Mound the base of the plant, thoroughly covering the graft and canes with 8 to 10 inches of a material such as compost or soil. For thorough protection, add a blanket of straw or leaves. In the spring, pull back the mulch and incorporate it into the soil.
First, dig a hole large enough to hold a 1-gallon container. Fill the hole with water and time how long it takes to drain out. If it takes less than 1 hour, you have sandy soil. 2 to 4 hours, you have silt. If the water is still standing after 4 hours, you probably have clay soil and poor drainage. Dig a hole about 6 inches deep, 12 inches if you'll be planting trees or other deep-rooted plants. Take a vertical slice of soil from the side of the hole and trim the sample so it measures about 1/2 inch thick. Remove the top 1/2 inch. Place the sample into a clean container. Remove any sticks, stones, or insects. Avoid touching the soil with your hands. To the same container, add another 4 or 5 samples from each area you're testing: lawn, flower beds, vegetable patch, and so on. Don't mix together soil from different testing areas. Follow instructions from your testing lab regarding packing, labeling, and returning samples.
Take cuttings from young plants in the middle of their growing season. Select several 3 to 5 inch shoots, preferably those that have not yet flowered. With a clean, sharp cut, remove each at its base, then strip off the bottom leaves. Dip the end of each cutting into a rooting hormone and insert it into a container filled with a rooting medium, such as equal parts of sterile sand and vermiculite, evenly moistened. Cover the container with a plastic bag supported by sticks and move it to a spot that gets bright, indirect light and has a temperature of about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Stem cuttings need consistent moisture and high humidity. Check them frequently and water and mist if necessary. After a few weeks, give each cutting a gentle tug. If it seems to pull back, it's probably rooted. When the roots are 1 to 2 inches long, remove the plastic bag for a few hours a day. This will get the cuttings accustomed to normal humidity. In a week or so, pot up the plants in regular potting soil or transplant them directly into the garden. Several techniques can be used to control the growth pattern of perennials and to encourage more bloom: pinching, shaping, and shearing. Begin pinching when plants are between 2 and 4 inches tall and have developed several sets of leaves. Pinch off the tip of the central shoot. new side branches will develop. When each branch is about 6 inches long, pinch out its growing tip. Continue until you are pleased with the plant's form. Stop pinching by mid-July to allow the plant to produce buds. Perennials that bloom in a single flush, such as Baptisia, can be shaped after flowering. Using pruners or shears, cut foliage back by about 1/3, forming a pleasing shape that blends with later maturing plants in your garden. Plants that get leggy, such as hardy geraniums, can be cut all the way back to the ground after they bloom. After a few weeks, new, compact mounds of foliage will form, sometimes followed by a second flush of bloom. Dig a hole that's twice as wide and 6 inches deeper than the height of the root ball. With a fork or shovel, rough up the sides of the hole so the soil around the roots doesn't solidify. Put about 6 inches of soil into the hole and firm it. Remove all string or twine. Set the plant in the hole and check the depth by laying a rod across the hole. The top of the root ball should be level with the rod. When the level is right, remove the wrapping and fill in the remaining soil and press it firmly in place. Make a rim of soil around the perimeter of the hole to hold in water. Water well. For the first year after planting, check frequently to make sure the soil is kept moist. Take cuttings in late spring or early summer from plants that are vigorous, healthy, and free of insects. With pruning shears or a sharp knife, take 4 to 6 inch cuttings from terminal or lateral shoots of the current season's growth. Each one should have several sets of buds. To prepare the cuttings, first remove flowers, buds, and seed heads. Strip all leaves from the lower half. Next, make a fresh cut 1/8 to 1/4 inch below a node, the place where a leaf joins the stem. If remaining leaves are large, remove about half. Dip the bottom inch of the cutting in a rooting hormone fungicide mixture. Insert it to a depth of 1/3 to 1/2 its length into a moistened rooting medium. Space cuttings about 2 inches apart. Mist lightly. Insert 2 or 3 sticks into the soil and place a clear plastic bag over the pot. Fasten it with a rubber band or plastic-coated wire. When the cuttings are well rooted, remove the bag. The first time you water, use a fertilizer made especially for transplants. In 2 to 3 weeks, plant the cuttings in a nursery bed or cold frame until they're big enough to move to their permanent homes. Moving an established shrub or tree is not easy and requires quite a bit of preparation. Start a year before you plan to move the plant by root pruning it. Dig a trench around the plant, about 2 feet deep and a shovel width wide. The trench should be 3 to 4 feet from a small shrub or tree, 5 to 8 feet from a larger one. Fill the trench with sphagnum moss. If root pruning is done properly, the plant will form a compact root system and be better able to withstand the move. When you're ready to move the plant, dig a trench in a circle at least 12 inches from the crown. Dig down at least 2 feet, forming a ball of earth that includes the roots. Rock the ball gently until you can lift it from the hole. You will have to cut some of the roots in the process. Place the plant and its ball of soil on a piece of burlap and move it to a sheltered spot. Wait at least 2 weeks before replanting it. In the meantime, water gently and frequently.
Broadcasting works well with seeds that germinate easily, such as cosmos, cleome, and bachelor's buttons. Rake the soil lightly to remove large stones and clumps of soil. Scatter the seed over the surface of the soil. Cover lightly using the flat side of the rake. Water gently but thoroughly. When the seedlings appear, thin them to the spacing recommended on the seed packet. Dig a trench about 1 shovel depth, 8 to 9 inches deep. Pile the dirt along the outside edge. Add organic material such as compost and any necessary soil amendments. Using a spading fork, thoroughly mix them into the subsoil to a depth of 8 to 9 inches. Make a second trench parallel to the first. Use the topsoil from the second trench to fill in the first trench, enriching it with organic matter. Repeat the procedure until the bed is dug. Fill the last trench with the enriched topsoil from the first trench. Start with level ground that has been double dug. Lay out strings to delineate beds and walkways. Scoop soil from walkways into beds. Amend the soil generously with organic material such as compost, mixing it in thoroughly. The edges of raised beds can be left open or shored up with timbers or other materials. Rake the surface of the bed to smooth and level it. Apply a material such as bark chips or gravel to keep down weeds in the walkways. Water the raised beds generously and deeply. Let the surface dry out so that it isn't muddy when you plant. Position the stakes when you plant the young tomato plants. Put in stakes first so you don't damage the roots. Use 4 to 6 foot stakes and sink stakes about 1 foot into the ground. Position plants 4 to 6 inches from the stakes. Plant tomatoes deeply so that lowest leaves are just above the ground. Roots will form along the buried stem. When the plant reaches the stake, tie cloth or coated wire to the stake and attach it to the plants by tying it loosely in a figure-8 fashion. As the plants grow, allow only 1 or 2 main stems to develop per plant. Pinch out any other side shoots as they form so the plants will grow tall. Side shoots appear where leaf stalks join the stem. Add ties at 12-inch intervals as the plants grow. To plant in rows, with a garden hoe, lightly tamp the soil so it's firm and level. Make a series of furrows. Check seed packets for appropriate depth and spacing. Sprinkle the seeds in the furrow. Cover them and again tamp lightly. Water gently but thoroughly. When seedlings are about 2 inches tall, thin them to the recommended spacing. To plant in hills, gather soil to form a mound. It should be 12 to 18 inches across and 3 to 4 inches high. Make a hole in the center of the mound. Drop a few seeds into the hole and cover them with soil. Firm the loosened soil to ensure good contact with the seeds. After seeding, water gently but thoroughly. If the lawn is irregular in shape, apply a header strip completely around it. Then go back and forth, overlapping just enough to ensure even coverage. Turn off the spreader when you reach the header strip so it doesn't receive too much fertilizer. If the area is rectangular, first apply a double header strip at each end. Then go back and forth the long way. If there are trees in the lawn, turn off the spreader just before you reach the trunk, then resume on the opposite side. Rake the prepared seedbed. Make sure it's level and free of rocks and debris. Sow the seed as recommended on the seed package. To ensure even coverage, divide the seed into 2 portions and cover the area twice. Make the second pass at a 90-degree angle to the first. Don't sow more seed than the package recommends. It can cause overly dense, unhealthy turf. Using a cage roller, cover the seed lightly with mulch such as peat moss. When you're finished, you should have about a 1/4-inch layer. To ensure good contact between seed and soil, roll the area with a roller filled 1/4 to 1/2 with water. Thoroughly soak the seedbed and keep it evenly moist at all times. After the initial soaking, water lightly but frequently. In hot weather, you might have to water more than once a day.
Rake and level the site. Then roll it with a water-filled roller, 1/4 to half full. To accommodate the thickness of the sod, the soil should be 1.5 inches below walks, driveways, edgings, and sprinkler heads. Lay the sod, starting with the longest straight edge of the lawn. Put edges of strips as close together as possible. Try not to leave gaps, and don't overlap. As you move from one row to another, stagger the ends, as you would if you were laying bricks. Use an old knife to cut pieces where necessary. Roll the new lawn with a water-filled roller. Fill in any gaps with soil. Water thoroughly, wetting the soil to a depth of at least 6 to 8 inches. From then on, water lightly every day until roots have grown into the soil below the sod. In hot weather, you might have to water more often. Watch the edges of the sod. They'll be the first to dry out.
Spread an even layer of organic matter over the planting area. It will take a little over 6 cubic yards of material to cover 1,000 square feet to a depth of about 2 inches. If you'll be sowing grass seed, add half the recommended quantity of starter fertilizer. Spread any lime or sulfur needed to adjust the soil's pH level. Using a rototiller, work the organic matter into the soil to a depth of 6 to 8 inches. Use a steel rake to rough level the site. Water the area to settle the soil. If possible, wait a week or two before sowing grass seed or laying sod. Weeds will sprout quickly, and at this stage they can easily be removed with a hoe. Rake the soil for final leveling. Don't rush. Eliminating bumps now will prevent puddling and keep the mower from scalping your lawn.
The night before repotting, moisten the soil thoroughly so it will be easy to handle and the root ball won't fall apart when it's removed from the pot. If you're planting into a clay pot, soak it in water for several hours. A dry pot will pull moisture from the plant. If the pot has been used before, scrub it with a diluted bleach solution before soaking. Place a few shards over the drainage hole in the new pot. Fill it 1/3 of the way with potting soil. To remove the plant from its pot, run a knife around the edge of the soil to loosen it from the sides. Lay the container on its side and carefully slide the plant out. Loosen the roots with your fingers or a knife. Make several shallow cuts from top to bottom of the root ball and an X across the bottom. Place the plant in the new pot, center it, and adjust the height so the top of the root ball is about an inch below the top of the pot. Fill in soil around the root ball, tamping it to remove air pockets. Water to the rim of the pot and allow the water to percolate through the soil. Place the plant out of direct sun for a few days until it becomes acclimated to its new container.
Start seeds in a shallow box between 2 1/4 and 4 inches deep with holes in the bottom for drainage. If the flat has been used before, wash it in a 10% solution of water and bleach. Fill the flat to within 1 1/4 inches of the top with a growing medium made especially for starting seeds. Let the filled flat stand in a larger pan of water overnight to moisten the soil. Press the seeds into the planting mix and cover to the depth recommended on the seed packet. When the seeds are in place, water with a mister or a fine overhead spray from a watering can. Keep the seeding medium evenly moist, but never allow it to become waterlogged. Most seeds need high humidity and soil temperatures of about 70 degrees Fahrenheit to germinate. To ensure sufficient humidity, place a thin pane of glass on top of the flat. Some seeds need strong light to germinate. Others require total darkness. Check the back of the seed packet for specific instructions. If you have insufficient sunlight, augment it with fluorescent light placed about 6 inches above the seed bed. Keep the lights on round the clock until the seeds germinate. Germination times vary greatly. Again, check the seed packet. The first sign of life will be a set of food storage cells or false leaves called cotyledons. Continue to water so that the soil stays evenly moist. When the first set of true leaves appears, thin the seedlings to the distance recommended on the seed packet. Begin to add a water-soluble fertilizer at about 1/4 of the directed strength. When seedlings have developed 2 or 3 sets of true leaves, transplant them to individual pots filled with potting soil. Just before transplanting, water the seedlings, then gently lift them out. Set each seedling into its pot, carefully firming the soil around the roots. Water gently but well.
If the plant has new, healthy canes, discard old, woody ones. Canes should be at least as thick as a pencil, preferably about the diameter of your middle finger. Begin by training the canes vertically up the trellis. By doing this, you're encouraging the plant to grow taller. Tie each cane loosely with twine, at intervals of 3 to 5 inches. Do not wrap the twine tightly around the cane. As the canes grow, continue securing them to the trellis. It may take 2 to 3 years before the plant reaches the top of a 6-foot structure. Fasten some canes to diagonal surfaces, as well as to vertical and horizontal ones. Twining one or more canes around a support gives a full effect, but do this only if you will not have to maintain the trellis or remove the canes for winter protection. It is almost impossible to untangle the canes once they start growing. When the plant reaches the top, train it horizontally, tying each cane as it grows.
Instead of planting in individual holes, it is often easier to dig a single trench and set all the shrubs into it. Spacing depends on the mature size of the plants. To achieve a softer, more natural look, shape them once a year, pruning individual branches with hand pruners. Shearing with hedge clippers twice a year gives a structured, formal appearance. Remove 1/3 to 2/3 of the new growth at each pruning. Hedges should be narrower at the top than at the base, so that adequate sunlight can reach the lower leaves. Fibrous or fleshy-rooted plants can form densely interwoven crowns and root systems. They are best and most easily divided with spading forks. Lift out the entire clump with a spade or digging fork. Shake or wash some of the soil off the roots. With the clump on its side, insert one of the spading forks fully into the root system. Insert the second fork so that its tines fit between those of the first. Grasp the handles of the forks and gently pull them apart. The clump should come apart with little effort and minimum damage to the plant. Repeat the process if you want smaller or more divisions. Rhizomatous rooted perennials, such as bearded iris, are easily lifted because their root systems are at or just below the surface of the soil. After lifting the plant, gently shake the rhizomes so they're clearly visible, then spray off any remaining soil. Carefully check the rhizomes for damage, insects, or diseases. With a sharp knife, cut rhizomes into smaller sections. Remove and discard old or unhealthy growth. Most rhizomatous perennials should be replanted as soon as they're divided. But in the case of bearded iris, first cut off old roots and trim the leaves to about 1/3 of their original height. Most tuberous-rooted perennials, such as herbaceous peonies, resent being disturbed, so divide them only when it's absolutely necessary. In the fall, carefully lift the plants and wash the roots so that buds are clearly visible. With a sharp knife, slice the root system from the crown downward. Bear in mind that each root section must have 3 to 5 buds or eyes to produce a plant that will bloom the following spring. Plants from 2 bud root sections will eventually flower. They will simply take longer. Discard weak or diseased sections, then sterilize the knife before cutting another section. Bushy perennials can be supported in a web made from stakes and twine. It should be set in place in early spring when the plants are just beginning to grow. Use thin green stakes about 2/3 of the eventual height of the plant. Position 5 stakes around the plant, pushing them deeply into the ground. Tie green twine to one stake and pass it around the perimeter, wrapping it around each stake as you go. Then pass the twine from stake to stake in a star pattern. The plant stems will grow up through the openings in the web, covering the twine and stakes. To find out how much water your sprinklers are applying and how evenly they distribute it, place at least 5 straight-sided containers randomly in the sprinkler pattern. Run the water for 15 minutes. Then use a ruler to measure the depth of water in each can. The average depth of the water is the sprinkler application rate. If there are big differences among the cans, permanent sprinkler systems probably need adjusting. Hose-end sprinklers can be positioned so the spray overlaps and a distribution is evened out.
Thoroughly water both the transplants and the prepared planting area. Arrange the plants on top of the bed in the pattern you want. Check plant descriptions for ideal spacing. It varies depending on the mature size of the plant and the effect you want to achieve. With a trowel or your fingers, make a hole the size of the root ball. Using your fingers or a knife, pull the roots out from the soil. Place the plant in the hole, spreading the roots out as much as possible. The top of the root ball should be level with the surface of the soil. Fill the hole with loose soil and press down, but do not compact it. Leave a slight depression around the base of the plant where water can pool. Thoroughly water the soil around the plants, not the foliage.
Before planting, thoroughly water the soil in the garden and in the container. Dig a generous hole that's wide enough to accommodate all the roots without crowding and at least as deep as the original container. You can measure with your trowel. Remove the plant from its container by turning it upside down and tapping gently. Loosen the roots with your fingers or a knife. Place the plant in the hole so the crown is level with the surface of the soil, spreading the roots as much as possible. Fill the hole with loose soil and press it down gently, but don't compact it. Leave a slight depression around the base of the plant and water thoroughly but gently. For the first 2 weeks, never allow the soil to dry out completely. Always water the soil around new transplants rather than the delicate foliage. For the first few days, protect the plants from wind and harsh sun.